All right. Well, I'm gonna get us started. Good morning, everyone. We're very excited today to have this discussion during Black History Month, and we have wonderful speakers today who are going to share their expertise surrounding the state and future for Black-owned businesses. There's going to be a theme here today, both on what Black-owned businesses can do and what can allies and partners do moving forward to support growth and prosperity. Supporting Black-owned businesses benefits our entire economy and keeps our neighborhoods vibrant and livable. So before introducing and turning this over to our fantastic moderator, Sharon Smith Akinsanya, I wanted to share some statistics on Black-owned small businesses here in Minnesota. Out of 500,000 small businesses in Minnesota, over 4%, or approximately 20,000, are Black or African American owned. This rate of business ownership here for African Americans is low compared to national levels of 9%. At the national and local levels, Black owned businesses have been hit particularly hard by the pandemic. According to analysis from the SBA Office of Advocacy from last year, the total number of Black self employed workers declined by 37.6% in April, and a partial recovery led to a decline of 18.4% by July. So we were still down 18.4% last year. The effects were even more pronounced for self employed Black women who experienced a decline last year of 19.8%. Here in Minnesota, additional census data analyzed by SBA shows that Black owners are less likely to be employer firms, meaning they're companies with having employees, than any other ethnic group. So, in terms of SBA lending, since 2018, Black borrowers in Minnesota have closed 221 SBA loans worth 50.8 million, or about 3% of all Minnesota SBA loans, and have created 2,600 jobs. For this year, we're off to a strong start. 21 loans have been closed by Black-owned businesses worth 7.3 million, creating 375 jobs, which is over 3.5 of all Minnesota SBA loans. Note that these loan stats do not include PPP or EIDL. And in terms of federal contracting, our preliminary figures show that 22.1 million went to Black-owned firms in Minnesota last year. Yes, these are sobering facts. We need to build on this. We're in a pandemic right now, and we all have a lot of work to do. So, despite all of this, we do have some good news and programs, and we look forward to sharing that support with our Black owned businesses here. Our team is working hard to move the needle, and we're eager to engage with businesses and leaders here throughout our communities on ways to do that. Please stay connected with the SBA in coming weeks through our newsletter and social media, and you'll see our actions speak louder than our words. Just this week, President Biden implemented changes to PPP aimed at promoting equitable access for small business relief and eliminating barriers that have disproportionately harmed minority owned, women owned, Main Street, and underserved small businesses. So today, our conversation is looking to the future while honoring the past contributions of Black entrepreneurs. I'm so happy to introduce our moderator, Sharon Smith Akinsanya. I met Sharon last year during the pandemic during a roundtable that she hosted with US Senator Tina Smith. Sharon Smith Akinsanya is the CEO of the Ray McKenzie Group, an award-winning Minnesota-based diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI marketing firm. And she's consulted with Fortune 500 companies, nonprofits, and top employers here, including US Bank, Thrivent, the Minnesota Timberwolves and Lynx, Best Buy, and more. She's the founder of People of Color Careers Social Hiring Network for Professionals of Color and is the author of Colorful, Competitive Strategies to Attract and Retain Top Talent of Color. Sharon, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much, Brian, for that awesome introduction. It is Black History Month, and I am so excited that we are having this important discussion about the future of Black-owned businesses. And so what we want to do today, we want to leave you with a robust discussion and provide you with, all of us with, including the Minnesota business community, Black-owned businesses, and all of the stakeholders that are on the call today. There's hundreds of people joining us today. And we want you to have access to our frank conversation about the future of Black-owned businesses. Now, here's how I want us to think about it. I want us to think about our collective responsibility as one Minnesota to make sure that Black-owned businesses not only survive, but thrive. Because when Black-owned businesses thrive, that's good for all of us. And we also want to leave you with one thing that will help you explode your business and also help stakeholders and allies help you explode your business. Because remember, we're all in this together. So coming up, we're going to have a Power Pack panel discussion, and I will be introducing you to the Power Panel in just a second. But right now, I am so excited that we are going to have a little bit of a conversation with St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter. And let me just tell you something. I am honored to call him a friend. And he's the fourth generation St. Paul resident from the Rondo neighborhood. And Mayor Carter, you know, he is a leader. He's an unapologetic leader with an equity agenda. You know, since taking office in 2018, he has, you know, have many accomplishments. And they include the city's, you know, raising the city's minimum wage, tripling free programs in our rec centers, eliminating late fines in public libraries, reestablishing an affordable housing trust fund, expanding immigrant and refugee support resources, and launching an office of financial empowerment. And my favorite is College Bound. College Bound St. Paul, where every baby starts with a seed bank account of $50 to be able to go to college. So I'm honored to present to you St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter. Welcome to the show, to our program, Mayor. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thank you. It's good to see you, even virtually. I haven't seen you in
I know, it's been a minute. It's been a minute. I'm going to need to talk to you about that too.
Right.
So good to see you. So good to see you. It is Black History Month, and we've been in the middle of a pandemic. Black businesses have been hit just so hard. But this conversation is about the future. What do you think that we should be thinking about as it pertains to the future of Black-owned businesses in the light of the fact that we've been hit so hard? I know that there's hope, and I know that you have a few things that you can talk about to bring us that hope as we climb out of this situation.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. You know, one, it's good to see you as well. It's good to be here. I appreciate the invitation to just spend this time with you guys. As we think about Black History Month 2020, right? Black History Month has always been a time to reflect on the wisdom of our ancestors and to think about, kind of do the Sankofa thing, look back while planning kind of for the future. And we don't have to look back really far to find some really poignant lessons. And you know, I'm working from home here, so you're gonna hear a baby and a dog and doorbells and things like that.
Okay, but don't hold her so bad.
Right. My hope is that we've learned as a community over the last year or so that our challenge right now isn't just getting back to where we were a year ago, right? That what we've seen is that as long as any of us don't have access to stable housing where we can quarantine, as long as any of us can't take a week off of work to care for a child or quarantine because we think we had a contact, as long as any of us can't go to the doctor when we're sick, then our economy is less resilient for all of us, right? My hope is that, as you know, we have a mantra in my administration that says no recovery. We're not looking to get back to where we were. We're looking to build a brand new kind of economy. And as we think about the way this economy has engaged with Black-owned businesses, it hasn't been good enough. Our Black-owned businesses, one, have an advantage over everyone else because they have fought every single odd, right? Whereas other businesses have to fight against just competition. Our businesses have to fight against structural racism. Our businesses have to fight uphill to get lending that's more available to other white cultures, to get seed capital, to get government contracts, to get all those things that, proportionally speaking, statistically speaking, our communities are still far less likely to be able to access. And so, you know, my hope is that we use this moment, that the Biden administration, in partnership with the Unified Congress now, uses this moment to say, you know what, where we've been is just not good enough. We have to actually take it seriously, what we talk about of kind of lifting the barriers, lifting the glass ceilings, ensuring that every child in our community can achieve their full potential, ensuring that every one of our businesses can achieve to their full potential. And I think what's the hope there for our Black-owned businesses that have been fighting against, all of our grandmothers used to say, you got to be twice as good to get half as much.
Absolutely.
And if we can finally really eliminate some of those barriers, if we can finally start putting our economy on a different track, for not just for our businesses, but for the workforce that our businesses rely on as well, then that could literally lift the floodgates for those businesses. Who she wants to get on camera. She wants to see.
I know she does. I want to see it too.
Right. She'll be on camera before we're done having this conversation. But all I have to say is, like, I think there's enormous opportunity for those businesses who can just get to the place where all they have to do is compete against the competition and not all that other stuff as well.
I mean, you bring up a good point, because when we think about the devastation of our Black-owned businesses, I mean, when we think about Rondo, when we think about Black Wall Street, when we think about where I grew up in Kinloch in St. Louis, Missouri,
That's right.
We owned our own homes, we had our own businesses, we had everything, things, we were okay. And then things happened structurally.
Mm-hmm.
It's the highway, 94, or in our case, it was the airport that was needed to expand, and y'all needed to move, or Wall Street. They just decided, we don't want you to in Tulsa, we just don't want you to have it.
That's right.
So to your point, we are fighting, but I do have hope for the future. I do believe we can build back better. And so when we think about policies in Minneapolis and St. Paul, are there any policies, or what are we thinking about right now that small businesses can tap into that maybe we haven't heard of yet? Is there anything new? Or is it, everything just, what is, you were working on some loan programs and some grants and things like that. Anything left, anything new that we should be thinking about?
I think there's two levels. One is the kind of immediate crisis level, right? The federal government obviously did their PPP, but it skipped a lot of our businesses. Our small businesses weren't able to access it because, what'd you say?
So, Mayor, what's happening with the next few weeks, though.
Mm-hmm.
And just mention it. So if your small business has 20 employees or less, we get to move to the head of the line between now and get the end date, March.
And that's exactly what I was going to say, is like having that awareness, I think is really important. Yeah. Because some of our, like I said, some of our small businesses, those our most vulnerable businesses, just didn't have the direct line, to be able to access that first round. We did what we called a bridge fund in St. Paul. Through our bridge fund, we've distributed millions of dollars to low-income families and struggling small businesses. It's not enough. I don't know what enough would be
exactly
in this context. But as we move forward, I think one of the things that's really promising that I'd encourage people to plug into, we're doing it, Minneapolis is doing it as well, is thinking about this concept of cultural destination areas, right? Mm-hmm. And this notion, I joke with some of my friends, they go on these vacations to Africa or to Asia or Europe, wherever it is. And I always joke with them, I'm like, you just spent $10,000 for an experience you could have had on the east side of St. Paul, or on the west side of St. Paul.
Right.
And, one of the things that I feel about this metro area is it's so diverse, it's so intercultural, it's so multilingual that we could brand our metro as a space where you can have real unique kind of cultural experiences, and a set of them that few metro areas, I think, can claim. And so that means investing more heavily, not just in Black-owned businesses, but in Black business districts, right? So that we can access an economy of scale with one another, and literally create a community level experience and not just a single business level experience. So those are the types of things that I think are really promising. I know Minneapolis is on that road as well, but it's something that we're kind of fully committed to as really an opportunity to expand the pie in St. Paul in a way that is literally just additive and not competitive at all.
Oh, absolutely. We need new Harlems. We need new spaces where we can be and belong and be culture meccas where everybody's feeling welcome. And so create that revitalization.
Yeah, and Sharon, one of the things, that day that you kind of look back on, I'm the same way. Our family lost over a half a dozen properties when the freeway came, when I-94 came through and uprooted Old Rondo. We'd be driving on the freeway near about Dale Street, and my dad would go, "You're in my bedroom right now."
Yes.
And to add insult to injury, Sharon, my father remembers seeing the St. Paul Fire Department burn down his mother's home as a training exercise. So that the level of traumatic, just social, generational, emotional, and economic trauma that creates, because it also gutted my own family inheritance that I stand to inherit, as well as so many people. And if you think about the fact that in St. Paul, the most recent estimate I've seen is that resulted in over $90 million in today's dollars of wealth stripped from our African American community in St. Paul. That doesn't add Tulsa, that doesn't add Oakland, that doesn't add Detroit, that doesn't add Cleveland. This story iterated itself all over the country. And so as we talk about the disadvantages that our community is up against economically, that our businesses are up against economically, it's sort of just this constant sort of reset that we've always been up against. So the opportunity to build these kind of business districts, I think, is exciting. The opportunity to access that, but then on top of that, what we had on Old Rondo was a business ecosystem, right? We didn't just have a black business, or a black grocery store and a black accountant, but the black grocery store had the black accountant doing their books.
Business, that's right.
And so I think the next level is figuring out, and right now we're all interested in supporting our restaurants, our service industry, those folks who have kind of been hit the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's an opportunity for us to rally together as well, because they need an ecosystem around them. Somebody has to do their payroll, somebody has to do their taxes, somebody has to do their books, somebody has to clean their spaces. So creating those, rebuilding those ecosystems, I think is what it'll take to really continue to build an economic engine.
Well, and Mayor, being intentional about it, being deliberate about it, making sure that you're seeking out, which is why I talked about in the brief opening, this is about all of us. This is about all of us finding ways to support Black-owned businesses and the ecosystems that we're talking about. Being able to help one another, but also making sure that allies are helping small businesses be successful. If you know something, say something.
That's exactly right. And that's something that the mayor can't do, right? The mayor can't say source and purchase with each other. But we have to figure out how to build. I can bring folks together, we can convene, but we have to figure out how to support each other in that.
It's hard. We either want to be one Minnesota or not. We either want to be one America or not. We want to make sure that we are all working harder toward this more perfect union or not. And guess what? We get to decide that.
That's right.
And I'm just asking everyone that's listening to us right now to just decide that we can do better and be better, and figure out ways to make sure that these Black-owned businesses are growing and thriving. And we're building those cultural ecosystems that benefit all of us. Tourism, right? I mean, it just would be insane. So it's a big idea, and we need to make sure that that's happening. So I know you got to run. That baby's there, but can I just see her? Is she?
Let's see if she'll come hang out with me for a second. Come on, baby girl.
Because see, this is our future. This is our future entrepreneur.
It's not just our future, it's our right now. She's on the Zoom calls with me all day, every day. So hi, Sharon.
Hi, baby. I'm Auntie.
Auntie.
So good to see you, my love. You're beautiful.
Smiling at you.
I know she's smiling at me. She know what time it is. So everybody join me in welcoming. Oh, look at that baby.
This is Amila, everybody.
Hello.
And she hasn't decided yet what kind of business she's gonna start. But she's gonna be. But that's our task, right? I tell folks all the time when they say, "What's your vision for St. Paul?" I say, "My vision for St. Paul is irrelevant. The question is, what's her vision for St. Paul?" When it comes time for her to choose where to plant her family or where to plant her business, what will she be looking for? That's what we need to be building, not what we think needs to be here.
Absolutely. We got to make sure we look back and then take care of the future. And I'm so pleased to have the eyes on you, young lady.
Right. Right. Well, thank you all to everybody who's commenting about her. Nobody ever listens to me because I sit on these Zoom calls and she comes and gets on my lap and nobody cares what I have to say. They just sit there smiling and waving at her.
Thank you so much for spending a bit of your extra time with us, Mayor Carter. I always enjoy it. So nice to see you, Amila. I'm going to actually hug you sooner than you think. Thank you so much. I gotta run. Take care of that baby.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So thank you so much. That was an awesome conversation with Mayor Carter. And it's always good to keep it real, when we're on these, Teams calls and, you never know what's going to happen. And that baby is sweet as she can be. And she's absolutely our future. And now, we're going to take a quick transition. We're going to have a power packed. And as I promised, we're going to have a discussion about how all of us can get in on the information about how and why it's important to support Black-owned businesses, and how it is important to make sure that we ensure that Black-owned businesses are not just surviving, but thriving. So please let me introduce you to our power-packed panel. So first up is Nika Constantino, and she is a financial advisor for Merrill Lynch, and you probably may have heard her on the radio. She is the host of Financial Fitness on KMOJ. She's an experienced financial advisor, and she's dedicated to making sure that her clients have tools to access to the best tools to build financial wealth. She also, like I said, she shares that health building expertise freely on her radio show, Financial Fitness on KMOJ 89.9. Welcome, Nika. So Nika, while she's getting her video on, and then next we're going to have conversation with Tabitha Montgomery. She's the executive director of the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association. And she doesn't know it yet, but she's my new best friend. Serving people and getting stuff done, let me tell you. She is currently the executive director of the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association, where she and the staff proactively look for creative ways to advance its advocacy, events, programs in our community. Tabitha has spent more than 20 years tapping into her gifts of management, communication, and visioning to serve a wide array of people, businesses, and organizations. Welcome, Tabitha.
Thank you, Sharon.
You're welcome. Next up, Anisha Murphy. She's the Director of Community Advancement for the Community Reinvestment Fund, and she is also the owner of Just Law LLC. Now, in her capacity at CRF, Murphy leads strategic partnership development and works with community stakeholders to create a more fair, responsive, and accessible community finance system in the Twin Cities. As I mentioned, she's also the owner of Just Law LLC, where these efforts will create new strategies that build strong local economies, create jobs, and support upward economic mobility in neighborhoods and transit corridors in the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area. Welcome to the show, my power panel. We're going to have a discussion. I need to see you. Are you guys' video on?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I still see the slide, so I just want to make sure, so I'm not quite sure what's happening, but I believe that you're there. Can you see me?
Yep, we can see you.
All right, sounds good. So let's get started. And as a brief reminder, we want to make sure that we are all getting the information that we need to be able to make sure that Black-owned businesses not just survive, but that they thrive. And Tabitha, I actually want to kick it off with you. What is the vision? What can we think about? What should we be realizing, as we think about Black-owned businesses? There's certain thing that comes to mind for many people, when we think about supporting Black-owned businesses and their ability to survive and thrive. What is the vision? What should we be thinking about? How should we be realizing? The mayor talked about cultural meccas and ecosystems and things like that. How do you see it?
Well, I think that I might start by saying that the power of Black businesses in general is that we're not unicorns, and they're not unicorns, meaning it's not different pathways generally for success than any other cultural community, whether that be our European brothers and sisters or our Latinx brothers and sisters, our First Nations brothers and sisters. Truly, the strength of investing in businesses, and specifically Black businesses, from my lens, from a community lens, is that the community in which these businesses exist, there's such intersectionality on every front between health, from livability and safety, from access, right, to educational institutions that are helping our young folk thrive. It's really about the blend of social determinants of health, in my opinion, that is what's needed to really unleash and unlock and tap into the next phase of growth for Black businesses in not only the Twin Cities, but across the state. I believe that there is emerging conversations about the very need to do that, to erode and to eliminate or to mitigate, at the very least, varying degrees of disparities across varying realities of the Black community, or BIPOC communities overall. And I think that that's where I think that there's a lot of rich opportunity if we can begin to truly take on those challenges. I think that that will have an amazing and almost unquantifiable impact on the Black business community.
Absolutely. Nika, do you have anything to add when we think about the vision and how we should be thinking about it as our economic engine and opportunity?
Here we go. Absolutely. And, thank you for everything that you said, Tabitha, and then also some of the comments that you've made, Sharon. When you spoke about Black businesses not only surviving, but thriving, it really hit a nerve with me because it's not just about support, but it's about saying, where can I be a customer, a client, a consumer, a patron? And it's also expanding the circle, right? So our most segregated places are our own households and the communities that we hold close and near and dear to our heart. And one of the things that I want to ask people to do is to begin to expand the definition of what they consider to be a Black business.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, we'll see people and they'll think about, where can I go to support a Black-owned business, but they're looking for a bricks and mortar store. And I want everyone who's on the line today, allies and all of us, to just think about, and a lot of times I see on social media, I saw on social media just because of this, someone said, what if I said supporting, white businesses? And we get that a lot sometimes in social media. And I just want to push back on that concept and say it is very difficult for people of color to do business with people of color by the nature of the system and how things are structured.
Right.
So when we want to talk about thriving as a Black business, I want you to realize that when you look at your own personal financial statement and you see where you spend your money, many people have the opportunity to allocate dollars to their community. And right here in Minnesota, we have double-digit unemployment in the Black community. In the Black community, we've been in a bit of a recession and depression at certain points during this economic kind of cycle. And so what I want people to think about is the lawyer.
Yes.
The lawyer, the partner at a firm. How does one become a partner?
Yes.
By bringing in clients and bringing in customers. And I'm running my own practice as well, striving to thrive kind of in that space. Your consultants, your catering, all of these different places and opportunities. When you moved into a home, how did you select your real estate agent? Was it just, it didn't even have to be intentionally exclusive, but are you meeting people in your natural network? And is that natural network exclusive? How do we find ways to become inclusive as allies? How do we find ways as other African Americans and Black people that want to move beyond support and kind of putting up a sign to say, I support Black business, and move to the space to say, every single time I spend $1, is there equity in the process? Because you're voting with your money each and every time.
Absolutely.
And so I love the conversation. I know that business owners are not in the business to get grants and to get charity, but it's up to all of us to be inclusive when it comes to the economic pie. Inclusive in every sense of the word. Are we always allowing equity in competition in our real estate agent and our CPA? Or are we driving those relationships based on our inner circle? And our inner circle, again, may not intend to be exclusive, but in many ways it is.
Absolutely. Anisha, anything on that?
Well, I think Nika just dropped the mic on all of us. I would just add Right. I would just add, I think the communal aspect to what Nika was saying, we have to really get back to that, right? In order to grow up Black businesses, it can't just be a mutual, I support them or I see you. To support with your dollars, like Nika was just saying. So I don't think we have to add more onto that
Yeah,
front.
yeah,
But I think Nika just hit, like, literally dropped the mic in what she was saying. Support is not just I see you. Support is through equity investments, through your dollars. It's getting to that communal aspect of doing business with Black businesses. And to Tabitha's point, we're not unicorns. We're out here. We're
right.
legit businesses. We're structured right. So don't think that you're doing a charity work when you're investing in or doing business with a Black business. No, you're getting the same service that you would if you invested in a European business or in a white led business. And taking off those um those structures, or not really structures, but off those blinders, and saying, oh, if I invest in a Black business, I'm doing this sort of work, versus I'm investing in good quality service because that's what we're bringing. So that's how you take us from just merely surviving to thriving. And I think that thriving word is really important too in this context, because so oftentimes we only talk about surviving. And so when you started off, Sharon, with the thriving, that's one thing that I've been really keen on, especially since the civil unrest, is what does it look like for Black culture to thrive?
Absolutely.
Knowing that there's Black excellence within us, and how do we let that shine versus all of these other narratives that are constantly told about our community?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
We have to be intentional about making sure that Black businesses are successful, going from
Mhm.
4 figures to 5 figures, 5 figures to 6 figures, 6 figures to 7 figures, 7 figures to 8 figure businesses. And that's what we need to be looking forward to. And everybody in the sound of my voice has something that they can do to make sure that a Black business is getting the access to information, tools, tips, money, revenue that they need to be able to explode their businesses. And I'm just asking you to stretch, not that far either, just to be
Mhm.
intentional about what it is that we're doing, because when we all win, we all win. See, if my small business isn't successful, that doesn't just hurt me, that hurts my 10 employees, that hurts the local supermarket, that hurts that Black accountant, that hurts,
Mhm.
it hurts all of that in the ecosystem. So this is why it's important for all of us to make sure that we're intentional about supporting Black owned businesses and really thinking about how it impacts all of us, because we need to decide if we want to be one Minnesota, one America, or not. So
And you know what, Sharon, what I love about what you said is we can all take on the banner on our own. We don't have to be a part of this collective, necessarily group effort. So everyone on the phone today has the power to decide um, how to move the needle in community,
yeah,
right? And so one of the ways that you're able to do that is really by bringing other people to the table and being a voice, and using that voice everywhere that you are, right? No matter where you are, you use that voice, whether you're on a board, whether you're an employee at a particular place. It's okay to put someone aside who's in purchasing or in supplier diversity,
mm,
and move from thinking about diversity and inclusion as a people management issue to a supply chain opportunity, because what we know is when the African American community is at 16, 18, 17% unemployment, like we've been here in Minnesota, when white men across the country have that exact same unemployment, it is a national tragedy that requires a legislative agenda to match what is going on. And so, what I'm here to say is when we have systemic exclusion, and sometimes, we talk about the past and people focus on things like slavery, but post 1865, we have peonage, we have Black codes, we have convict lease, Jim Crow, Civil Rights Act, gentrification, redlining, right here, Rondo, and there's so many different things. So where is the intentional inclusion? And what I want everybody on this call to realize is that we can all be about intentional inclusion. We can all ask, you know what, in this RFP that just went out for whatever, we only had men. Can we include women? Can we include Black Americans? And it's okay to call out Black, right? It's okay to do that. We have to give each other permission to open up our circles and expand customer and client relationships and begin to start thinking about inclusion in on every expense line item that we possibly can.
Absolutely. You know, Black lives matter. Black businesses matter. I can't tell you how many speeches that I've done this month on why Black lives. And why Black lives is because of everything that Nika just laid out, from 1816 all the way up, you know, when the first slaves rolled up on the shores of Virginia. You know, so Black lives matter. We got to catch up. And we're becoming a majority minority nation. We do want to work really hard to get toward that more perfect union, but it's not going to happen unless we are all successful. I told this power panel a story when we were prepping for this amazing conversation about my small business being adopted. I would have been out of business. I wouldn't have a payroll of 10 employees that I pay every 2 weeks and another 10 independent contractors that are on my payroll. It wouldn't happen unless a CEO of a majority-owned business said, you know what? I believe in the work that you're doing. I am going to hang in there with you. I believe it. And we're still friends to this day. This was many, many years ago. And every single year he makes an investment in the work that I'm doing. He was intentional and wanted to make sure that I have financial resources, information, technical, you know, advice, things that I needed to be able to really explode my business. And I've been able to pay that forward and introducing other CEOs like him to other businesses that need that type of support. So we're all in this. And he didn't have to do that. But I'm here to tell you, I would not be in business, but not for him understanding that this was a good bet. You know, it was a good bet. So we can all make things happen. So you guys, in your opinion, what is it that we need more than anything else? And we may have touched on it, and that's okay. But what do we need more than anything else to ensure that Black-owned businesses thrive? What do we need more than anything else? And we think we may have touched on it, but there may be something else.
You know, what I would say is, Sharon, I think that a couple of things that you and Nika have touched on, and Anisha as well, with regard to the importance of a customer base and how everyone on this call can become a customer, whether it be through supporting, identifying, being intentional about where you spend your dollars. And I think that that's certainly one tool that we're going to make sure that people leave here with today. Mm-hmm. I think another tool, regardless of whether or not you're a Black-owned business or you're an ally or you're on this call for any number of reasons, but is to stress the importance of what questions are we asking about the efficacy of the programs and the tools and the resources that we currently have aimed at supporting Black businesses, BIPOC businesses across the state. And what I mean by that is when we think about technical assistance, that certainly those types of programs and support, I believe, are essential. But do we have an understanding of whether or not we're over-indexing in technical assistance and not putting enough resources in the portfolio toward low-cost capital? Right. Or free capital in order for businesses not only to understand how to become a social media savant, but they actually are then in the position to hire somebody to be able to do that work that allows them not to have one additional thing to do as an entrepreneur or a small business owner, that there's actually a delineation of responsibility so that they can provide customer service with excellence as they would desire, that they can invest in the actual property if they're operating out of a physical storefront, that they can actually prop up the right infrastructure within a home office in order to take their business to the next level. I believe that there is a real opportunity, which is in our broader narrative about where the disparities lies. Yes, we are able to pull a report about the disparities with respect to education or healthcare. Blue Cross Blue Shield in 2018 pulled together a report for the state of Minnesota that said each year health inequities cost this state $2.26 billion. And so I think that there is a real need for us to soberly look at what is our current allocation of resources costing us. It's not because there's not any investment in Black businesses, but oftentimes we want to continue to do the same thing and expect different results. And I say that consistently, Black businesses are undercapitalized, don't have access to a network of angel investors, if you will, that might even be their family members or first tier network of friends and alliances. And that puts us already, even with an amazing idea, an amazing business, at a disadvantage if you cannot continue to invest in the health of the business, right? So once we, I think, do a better job of really assessing the efficacy of where resources are currently being spent and get really sober and honest about the fact that it's always been about the money and who has access to the money in order to strengthen their business more quickly so that they can deliver the experience and the expectations that any reasonable customer would have, then I think that we would begin to be cooking with gas. And that's in the midst of understanding that where Black businesses are located are equally important. So if you have an area that has experienced historical divestment, strategic and structural systematic removal of capital from your community, that actually increases the challenges of bringing in customers that shop at 50th in France to the corner of Bloomington and Lake.
All right.
And so we have to move beyond propaganda statements about one Minneapolis to really ask the question, how many of us in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and across the state are willing to navigate into other areas of the community that they don't necessarily normally travel? So you can buy into the narrative that one area of the city is less attractive or less optimal to shop in than another. And that also depresses the customer base for Black businesses.
That's right.
So I think that those are the tools that we really need to look at. Who's advocating that the efficacy of these programs are really looked at more closely? And how do we do things differently this year than we did last year? So we can stop pretending in some instances that we have no idea why we can't make advancements. We have no clue as to why we can't move to the next level, that we are completely amazed, shocked and astonished that businesses that are being led by Black folk continue to have some of the same challenges that we've talked about 2 decades ago.
That's right. Anisha, what do you think that we need more than anything else?
I would add to what Tabitha says and just go a little deeper. I think we oftentimes continue to hinge upon the capital issue. And while capital is needed, I think what type of capital is needed, right? Like we need some very patient, conceptionary capital to help scale our businesses. That's not the only thing that's needed. I think we need to start looking at this from a holistic perspective. And I'd like to call it the 3 C's. So connection, capital, and then also coaching, right? How do we get and make sure the entrepreneur is whole? Because you can give a person a loan and send them on their way. But if they don't have the other C's, if they don't have the connection to opportunity, right? Whether it's procurement with the state, whether it's another job, B2B, whatever, then they're just over debt and they don't have anything to work that off of. And then also if then they don't have that coaching, they don't have that mentorship, that training to help them with bidding projects or to help them get their legal documents in order, to help them get their financial documents in order, then we're not really setting them up for success. So how do we go beyond the capital conversation and start preparing these businesses in a holistic perspective in order to meet the needs of not just the community, but the broader society, right? We don't, again, it's not about this charity sort of thing. We're not looking for a charity or a handout. we're looking for holistic solutions to help really get our businesses to the next level. And I think that is what's missing, because so oftentimes we get in conversations and the only thing we talk about is the undercapitalization of our businesses. But there's other things that we need to go beyond that and talk about how do we look at this from a holistic perspective, and then start pulling in the tools and resources that are going to be needed in order to get these businesses scaled up and thriving.
Absolutely. No,
I
you bring up a good point. Go ahead, Nika.
I was going to say, I love the 3 C's and everything that she said about that, because when I think about what's most important, she really touched on it. What
Right.
I'm asking businesses to do is to measure. Everyone should measure. When you don't measure, you're missing the mark. And so we have all of these companies who've made these declarations about Black lives and how they're going to support different initiatives. Well, we should move further and ask that all of those organizations, chambers, there's all these different local chambers of commerce and everything like that. Are you measuring what you're doing with the supply chain? I don't want you to just think of, I don't even want to pair support with Black businesses. I want to pair patron or, customer base, or, some type of revenue explosion. These businesses don't want anything different than what majority businesses want. But what we have to be honest about is what Anisha said around connection. When we look at different business owners, how much of their success came from connection? Maybe connection because of the school, maybe connection because of the type of relationship that you have with your family. Sometimes we don't even understand how these structures, like I said, are systematically excluding others. And so what is required is for people to measure, because when they measure, they become aware of a problem. It puts something right out here up front for us to take notice of it. So I want corporations, I want cities, governments, and institutions, and I want us personally, every person on this call, to measure where you're spending and the type of businesses that you are voting on a day-to-day basis, on a monthly basis, when you look at your expenses and when you look at where you spend. So measure.
Absolutely.
In addition to measuring, it's about being willing to take the next step and to be willing to bring everybody to the table on every single line item. How
Right.
can I be more inclusive here? Is there another partner that we could work, not asking you to do anything different, but we're looking at this particular legal relationship. Is there a partner at another firm that we can look at? And if there isn't, then is it just that they're not able to bring in the same business as someone else for whatever reason? Is there someone else that you're going to, like you said had been done to you, plant a seed in? How are you reaching back and pulling forward in community? How are you reaching back and pulling forward in community of women? How are you reaching back and pulling forward in communities of Black people? And you do that with increasing revenue in those areas. It is proven that when we expand a Black business in terms of revenue, that business is more likely to hire people that look like them.
Mhm.
And so that's great. And not only that, when we put a person in place that is responsible for hiring in a majority company, we know that we move the D&I needle.
Right.
So,
Right.
because those barriers aren't there. So what we need more than anything is to move the comma to the left and break down barriers. And we break down barriers with the 3 C's that Anisha said. We break down barriers in the way that Tabitha said, and the way that we're all saying. And the good news about this is we can all do something about it now. That's the blessing in the conversation. We can decide to change communities with every single dollar that we spend.
No question, no question. I think what we need more than anything, all of everything that you said, but I'm gonna lean toward Anisha's side. I think that we absolutely have to have an organized resource, tools, tips, advice, marketing, social media. How do you, with the legal documents, making sure that you really have access to a resource or a group of resources on a regular basis to check in, to make sure that you are really moving your business forward. Someone who understands how to set a financial plan and a goal year over year, that you can read a P&L. You understand, those next level steps that you need, the marketing, all of the things. So I do a lot of coaching and talking to small businesses because people ask me all the time, how'd you get 10 employees? How does that work? How did you grow? What did you do? Will corporations finance my dream? I learned how to do business with corporations. I learned how to solve people's problems. And then when you solve people's problems, they write checks. So we also need to figure out how can we be sharing skills and resources that we have with one another.
Can you talk about that a little bit, Sharon? I know you're the moderator, but I think it's right. But I think it's very important for you to be able to share with the people on this call. And I think it's a good question for Anisha and Tabitha as well, is for you, how did you break into a different network to improve your net worth and business revenue? So can you talk about how you bridged that gap and how you started to do business with corporations?
Yeah, I'll take a little bit of time and share with you that story. So I launched my business in 1996, the Ray McKenzie Group. My baby girl was a year old. Her name is Ray McKenzie. And my business was always structured around working with corporations to help them do a better job of building stronger relationships with communities of color. And so my background is sales and marketing, so in advertising. So I always knew how to reach out and touch corporations, but I wasn't quite sure how I was going to do that in business for myself. So I launched a marketing firm to do that. And it really had to, and I was able to do that because I took care of my network. So my biggest message is nurturing your network and not taking relationships for granted. So everyone that I met over the years they were able to help me get to the next level. How do I get the relationship with this CEO? Can you introduce me to that CEO? Can you introduce me to this CHRO? And saying yes to networking events that are after work and really building on those relationships. I still have 5 networking events a week with no agenda, just meeting people to see what it is that we can do or not do, but at least we'll know one another. So it was building on a network and then building relationships inside of those corporations over the years, and one led to the next, to the next, to the next. But you have to have big ideas and you have to solve problems. And so I invested in my education, invested in resources to be able to teach me what I didn't know. And so now I share that with others in my networking calls and through other resources as people call and ask me about it. So that's a short story short, but this is not about me. But
I think it was important though, so I thank you so much for sharing that. And I know that Anisha can share about resources for people who are on the call who want to know, where can I go to get this information? We're talking about technical assistance. We're all aware of the places you can go to get technical assistance. Where do we go?
So absolutely. Before, let's do a time check. Are we going to be doing a Q&A around 11 or so? I just want to make sure as we move through the conversation. So I hope everybody's putting their questions into the chat. And I know that Sarah and the other team at SB are going to be monitoring those. So yes, I mean, Anisha, you're at the Community Reinvestment Fund. You have lots of access. You also own your own business, and so to Nika's point, what is there something that you can share, as we think about how we explode our businesses and have more access, given what you talked about with the 3 C's, which I absolutely love. So I'm all on board with you on that. And we need to talk offline about how we make that how we give people access to that. Like that's a thing, like that should be a thing. And we need to make sure that, people are accessing those 3 C's. Anisha?
So Zoe just dropped in the chat around the small business team with the city of Minneapolis. They have tons of resources for city of Minneapolis businesses that are looking for technical assistance organizations. Just to name a few, in addition to the work that we do at CRF, and we're not really a technical assistance provider. We actually are alternative financial institution, but we work with technical assistance providers such as the Northside Economic Opportunity Network, NEON, such as the Metropolitan Economic Development Association, MEDA, such as the Latino Economic Development Center, LEDC, such as the African Economic Development Solutions, AEDS, African Development Center, ADC, and others to that provides that technical assistance. I will also say that there are groups that may not be technical assistance providers or organizations, such as small law firms like the one that I run, Just Law LLC, that provides a ton of technical assistance to small business owners. And I know that the city of St. Paul also has resources. So I think it's to everyone's benefit to do a little bit of research in addition to this conversation, right? That I know and I believe is being taped, to really figure out what technical assistance avenues are out there and that work best for to help your business scale. A lot of these TA providers are geographically constrained. And organization that I didn't talk about were the chambers. The chambers are work and they have tons of opportunities and expertise just on their boards and connect.
Uh-oh, Nisha, I think you froze it.
Yeah, I lost her too, Sharon.
Okay.
I lost her. I'll pick her up what I think she was going to say. Yeah. I think she was going to say that the local chambers of commerce are an amazing networking opportunity for connection. And right. She talked about the 3 C's, and us getting plugged into those chambers are very important. Many of the chambers of commerce that focus solely on business do business with each other. And when you look at the chambers, they're not quite diverse, right? And so that's something that we can plug into and just reach out to the Chamber of Commerce where we live, get more information about how they're structured so that we can do what she said and what you said you did, Sharon, is you were able to network. Some people don't even know where to begin. So if you just Google wherever you live and Chamber of Commerce, so St. Paul Chamber of Commerce, Minneapolis Chamber of Commerce, Blue Earth Chamber of Commerce, and try to then begin to build the network that may not be, that may have not been as inclusive in the past, but is willing to do that. They have a goal to move the comma to the left for all business owners. Right. So let's start having conversations with those places so that we can do what you've done and expand the network.
And can I just say though that I think that I think that one of the I think that one of the things that comes up for me, which again, I don't disagree. I love this conversation. Like, I don't disagree that the connections and the customers are essential, because this is certainly not about charity. But what I think is resonating is when we think about the number of technical assistance programs that, at least for those who are maybe considered in the know, so we are a subset of the community that are in the know, that can rattle off the fact that some degree and a variety of degrees, if you will, of technical assistance exists. And I think I'm just going to go back and double down on part of what my point was with respect to balance. If we have so many technical assistance programs in so many municipalities and private institutions that provide the technical assistance, how in the world are we not further along? And what I submit is that we do not have oftentimes enough resources in the right buckets to capitalize the technical assistance that leads to an individual business owner's capacity. So as a neighborhood association, and I don't have my own business, but what I will say is when we are trying to educate, build awareness, connect our business community within South Minneapolis, within Greater Powder-Horn specifically, to resources, or encourage them to call one of our partners in the community that can provide some additional oomph, right? What we hear often is, I don't got time for that. I mean, we have over-engineered sometimes, overcomplicated, and assumed that a lot of business owners have a plethora of additional time to do all these things in an optimal fashion while still not having the capitalization that they need in order to make sure somebody has their eye on the front of the house as they're focused on the back of the house to make sure that they have all of their documents, whether it be legal, whether it be policies, whether it be standard operating procedures in place. And so that's just me saying, who is actually calling for an investigation, an assessment
Right.
of the efficacy of all the things that we currently have? Because all I'm simply saying is thank God for technical assistance, and yet it's not enough.
It's not
And
enough.
so we need
Say
to be
that,
able, if they are
Tabitha. Say
technical
that.
assistance that's out here, then it needs to be linked at NDC, LEDC. Then they need to have a pot of cash to help once a business is denoted as being healthy. They have a healthy infrastructure by which to operate against their mission and their vision and their values in service of their customers. Then how is it possible that we're making it so difficult for them to then have the resources to invest in their business?
That's
I
right.
wish
And
I
so
could say
this is
amen.
where I'm at.
I
That's
wish
what-
I
This is
could
where I'm
say
at.
No,
I
no.
wish I could say amen to everything that you said, because when we look at the average Black-owned business, we're looking at a revenue of $27,000. And when you have a small business with a low revenue, you just don't have that kind of capacity. And that's why I'm asking corporations and people who have these buckets of revenue and these buckets of spend to move the focus of D&I from people management to also the supply chain,
Absolutely.
right? Is there diversity in your supply chain? And that's why I'm asking the question, because in order for a business to be able to build capacity, we have to move the comma to the left and we have to build revenue. And so the revenue is where the exclusion is taking place. You know, it's not taking place in all of these areas of grants and technical assistance, but you didn't go into business to get a $5,000 grant. You didn't go into business to get a $10,000 grant or to get technical assistance. People want to be in the position that Sister Sharon is in, where they're able to expand revenue and increase capacity. And so we have to allow inclusion in the expansion, in the expansion mode.
Absolutely.
But Sister Sharon was so honest and gracious in acknowledging, not that she had a sugar daddy, but that there was people out here in these streets in corporate America, forgive my looseness, Sister Sharon, that basically say, yo, we're going to make sure that you have access to contracts on a consistent basis by which you can assuredly build your business upon. And so that is the customer component. And I thank goodness, and I know that it is the customers essentially that businesses want. They don't necessarily want to know who is the latest and greatest technical assistant support specialist. They would rather be talking to customers and not technical assistant specialists.
That's right.
I believe that there is truly an opportunity for us to all take a 30,000 step back and say, how many resources are we putting into technical assistance as opposed to the pipeline of capital that is needed for businesses to run their businesses? And again, I'm not suggesting that the coaching isn't essential, that I'm not suggesting that ensuring that you have access to legal expertise isn't essential, or any of the things that you need to have a foundationally strong and healthy entity on any level. And yet, what I see continually and constantly is that we will not investigate whether or not we are balanced in our approach to supporting Black BIPOC businesses, meaning as much as we're willing to stand up and testify legislatively for technical assistance, then jump out of your chairs and stand up for the cash in order to strengthen the structures of these businesses.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely the case. And yeah, and no, I don't, and I'm fine with being loose. And that's exactly what happened. I wouldn't, I would not be here. I mean, I was quite talented, but I didn't have access to capital. I didn't have access to the things that I needed at the time. I had the ideas, I knew I had the vision, and I don't know where I would be, but I took that investment and I made it work.
And I just want to tell everybody that all of you can be an ally. Everyone can take a piece of either what Tabitha said or what Sharon said, what I said, what Mayor Carter said. Everyone can be an ally. Everyone can be a part of reaching back and pulling forward to to increase economic spend in marginalized communities. And we can do that at home. We can do that each and every day, every time we spend a dollar. So I'm asking everyone to take personal inventory of who you spend money with. And I'm asking for the Black folks on this call just as much as I'm asking for everyone else to take personal inventory of where you spend and how you've come to know those individuals, and to see if there's any way that you can expand that to be more inclusive, so that we're able to move the comma to the left in terms of revenue, so that we're able to increase hiring as well, and we're able to do our part to close the unemployment gap in the community, in the Black community specifically, because it is an emergency.
Oh,
I want to
emergency. Go ahead, Tabitha.
No, I was just going to say, in addition to that, because what I love about this conversation is, do not get it twisted, everybody. We are leaving you with tactical things that you can do. And I know that it sometimes is exhausting as a small business when you get those surveys popping up in your inbox, or if somebody within the technical assistance world or within the municipality has asked you to share your sob story or your story about what you need one more time. And so it's exhausting, but please stick with it, because the more that we are on the same page, I believe that there is a breakthrough that is around the corner. Yes. And yet, what my memo is for the people who are connected to on any level of government and or foundation that supports a technical assistance program, to really do that due diligence around the efficacy of those dollars, so that you make sure not that you're removing dollars from technical assistance programs, but you might have to say, I need a 3-to-1 match here. I need to invest in the technical assistance, and then I'm going to write a check, so that with the technical assistance programs have been launched, when they go back and they ask their business owners, are you able to use that social media training? Are you able to use that pro forma training? Are you able to use, and when the business owner is honest and say, I haven't had the time to get to it, then that technical assistance division can cut a check and say, go get you some staff to help you be able to structurally improve your business model, so that it's not ever about the handout. It is truly about the structural strength that our Black businesses have been denied for too long.
I love that. Amen. 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 I love you, Tabitha.
I tell you, I can't to tell you what it felt like to get to that first employee that you hired, and then that second employee, to be able to do the things that Tabitha is talking about. And so that we just need to get to that first employee, right?
Employee.
First one. And then and that moves you to the needle to the second employee, and then the third employee, if that's your business model. But I tell you, I felt amazing. I just needed some help, just a little bit of help.
On being amazing, I just want to say, because it is Black History Month, and we've been talking about Black economic power, essentially. After emancipation, at this time in history, there were said to be 4,047 millionaires in this country, and 6 of them were African American after emancipation. So I just want people to know, the business owners to know, that don't lose the faith, because I know how hard it is. All of us know how hard it is to build a business, in the middle of a pandemic, to build a business when revenue is low. But I just want you to think about, after emancipation, there were 6 African American millionaires: Madam C.J. Walker, Robert Reed Church, Hannah Elias. We had Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I just want you to understand that if these people could achieve this immediately after emancipation, then we can move the comma to the left. We can move our revenue. We can increase revenue. Allies can increase economic spend. We can do what Tabitha said as it relates to technical assistance, and stop making these declaratory statements and start moving into action. So if we can lift ourselves and our families out of financial trauma, the trauma that the Black community has seen, and leave an everlasting impact on the next generation, then we can overcome the hurdles that have been placed on us today, to have success in Black-owned businesses, not only in Minnesota, but across the United States.
So
Can
listen.
I add to what Nika just said?
Yes, of course. Yes.
I think that in addition to all of that, I also think that to what I heard Nika saying is, and oftentimes we get so caught up in social media and all of these different things and these millionaires being made and pandemics, et cetera, but also give yourself grace because you are surviving being Black in America on top of living through a pandemic. I think sometimes we always think we have to be acting and actively acting. And there are times where we're going to act and there are times where you're going to rest too. So I think that that's really key to put in there. In addition to everything that has been stated, is because oftentimes we always have to be the advocate. We have to be the business owner. We have to do all of these, make sure allies are moving and doing all of this other stuff. But we just don't ever have the time to take time for rest and to give ourselves grace. So I would say the one thing that I've been keen on is giving myself some grace and knowing that I'm exactly where I should be, where I am right now is where I should be. And I'm glad to be on this panel with this dynamic group of leaders as we really do move the state of Black-owned businesses in the Twin Cities and Minnesota forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And we're going to just take a few questions before we have to wrap up. We're going to end promptly at 11:30. But I just want to start with one question about what do you think of the MBE certification programs, you know, where you have to be certified and to go into the supplier, you know, diversity and get called on by these corporations. I mean, what do we generally think about being certified as a Black-owned business? Tabitha?
You know, honestly, guys, ladies, however you see yourself, listen, there is no problem with certification. Yeah. We've never had a problem meeting a goal that is before us.
Yes.
And yet what we need to often unpack is the complexity of the certification, the process itself. And so is it really meant to ensure that the person or the entity or the business can deliver against and to provide that which they claim? Or do we knowingly see that the process is about ensuring that not a whole lot of people can clear the hurdle? And so I fully denounce the certifications processes that are not really interested in diversifying their supply chain, but it's more of a procedural process to say, look how good you have to be in order for us to even consider you. So I think that that's the both and, meaning certifications in and of themselves to me are not the problem, but sometimes you have to understand or ask the questions and push our elected and appointed leaders to say, what are you doing to market the certification process? Who are you telling about the steps? And how many people do you have out here evangelizing, shall we say, about the fact that this is an essential way to quadruple your revenue? And so if you look back and you say, well, you don't have not a dollar towards your marketing support, you got a marketing coordinator focused on sharing the good news of certification, then you can't possibly be serious about ensuring that this information reaches all the right people. Oh, and by the way, you only have the information in English. That doesn't serve our communities overall. I mean, we have to get serious about helping and push and demand that the programs and systems are in place, that there's effective evaluation against them to ensure that the process itself is not preventing the goal.
I agree with you completely. And I can just say, you know, that I have not secured any revenue from corporations as a result of me being certified. So I have always done the certification process just in case somebody asked me, but I have never received one dime, and I've been in business since 1997 as a result of being certified. Now, I'm not saying that certification isn't good, and that's just my own personal experience. And it could be because I already have solid relationships with major corporations, but nobody has ever asked the question. So
I think that's an important fact, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. You know, I have nothing else to add from what Tabitha said regarding the certification process.
I think I would add, and I would just say that I think, Sharon, you hit the heart of the nail on the head in that if we certify, we go through these hoops to certify, where's the access to opportunity after certification, right? Because like, I feel like that has historically been barriers or another thing that we have to check off the list, and it's not opening opportunities for a job or for business. And so if it's just going to be another thing off the list that we have to check, then I think it's fair to say that we should do away with certification, especially because if they're supposed to be opening opportunities and they're not, that's the heart of the issue.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's been another question about, has there been any discussion about changes in lending credit policy that maybe you're aware of, Anisha, that are needed to facilitate greater flow of capital to minority-owned biz? So this is the proverbial credit question.
For sure. I think at CRF, I can only speak to the work that we're doing at CRF. We have been looking to see how we can dismantle barriers and provide access to capital more freely. And one of those barriers is the credit box system. So how do we adopt more systems or more products that actually meet the needs of community versus creating a product and then pushing it out to community and telling them this is what you need. So things that we have been working on is looking at credit-based lending and using technical assistance providers. And I totally agree with everything that Tabitha said. I'm not advocating for or against TA providers. I think they're good for coaching. But how do we leverage that relationship as a credit enhancer for businesses to do away with those credit box systems? And how do we look at more patient capital products, such as, equity? Because like we talk about capital and debt, but we never talk about capital equity, or at least in the conversations that I'm a part of. So how do we use those sort of patient capital products in order to help these businesses get the resources and tools needed in order to scale their business?
I would like to say about that also, this is where I say to the SBA, thank you for having us here, but I also want you to do some work as well. We need to have SBA lenders in the community, in the Black community, that focus on Black people and descendants of slaves. It's very difficult to start a new organization and become an SBA lender, right? With all of the different products and tools that they have available. There is a plethora of things that you need to be able to become an SBA lender. We have historical Black organizations, African American organizations that miss the mark. And so when we have things like situations like a pandemic, where we have Black people disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, we're also disproportionately excluded from a lot of the relief efforts. And so, I want to say there's work to be done to make sure that we're allowing access to wonderful programs that the SBA provides in Black communities, specifically working with descendants of slaves, because we don't have that here in Minnesota and many places across the United States. So, that's an important kind of add-on.
No, I think that's a good point. Anisha, you have a question specifically, another one. Can you please repeat the 3 C's?
Oh, yes. So it's capital, which could be grants, it could be debt capital or equity. There's connections, so connection to opportunity. So that's all about procurement, that's jobs, that's opportunity, to what Sharon talked about earlier, to help grow these Black businesses. And then there's the coaching aspect. So it could be coaching as far as a peer mentor, or it could be coaching as far as technical assistance, but someone helping and getting these businesses their legal documents, their financial documents, and then ways to navigate through systems that we just aren't privy to because we are not in the majority when launching or getting into business.
I love that. I love
that. I would just like to add a friendly amendment, if Anisha would so allow me, and it can be the 4 C's, because community is another element to the success of Black businesses, period. And I think what I see in our community from a neighborhood lens is that when you so systematically disinvest from housing opportunities, from employment opportunities, when we look at the cultural corridors that were so severely impacted across the Twin Cities through the unrest that sparked from the heinous murder of George Perry Floyd Jr., what we have to understand is that certainly has contributed to preventing people who would come otherwise into the corridor to shop into the corridor and support a variety of Black BIPOC businesses, including Black-owned businesses. And so I want to affirm what I heard Anisha say in terms of how we have to take care of ourselves.
Yes.
Self-care. It's not about working yourself to the nub and needing to be everything to everybody and do everything at every moment. But I would encourage and implore, in fact, each of you within the bandwidth that you have is to pick a social issue in your community that you care about and follow it. Whether it be how we make sure that we have housing justice, how we make sure we are developing equitably in community, how we have livability and safety at the forefront so that your customers feel confident that they can come to your doors and access it safely. All of those affect your success as a small business owner. And that has often been denied our communities structurally and systematically, which is it's not even a quiet thing, that when we don't have enough of the right education or school systems, when we don't have housing that people can afford, when we don't have all of these things, it only serves to depress the possibility of our businesses thriving unaided. And I say unaided, not because help is a bad thing, but because we've never often had the opportunity to maintain for decades at a time cultural communities that are thriving because of what we're putting out and not what we have to continue to resurrect.
Thank you so much. So we're at 11:25, and I want to give our power panel an opportunity to wrap up with some closing remarks. Take about 30 to 45 seconds or so, and also tell us a little bit. I gave you, a brief introduction, but please, let everybody know a little bit more about what it is that you do, and how they can follow you and connect with you on social media. Anisha, can you start?
Sure. So as Sharon said in the opening, my name is Anisha Murphy. I am the Director of Community Advancement Twin Cities at the Community Reinvestment Fund USA, which is a national CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution, providing alternative lending solutions to underserved, often underestimated and unbanked communities. So that's BIPOC, that's women, that's veteran. In addition to my work at CRF, I run my own small business law firm, Just Law LLC, where our goal is to provide affordable, accessible, innovative legal tools to small business owners, entrepreneurs, nonprofits, in order to build successful businesses that are thriving. Like, that's the heart of everything that I do. You can follow me on Instagram at Anisha Murphy ESQ. And my LinkedIn is just my first and last name, Anisha Murphy. Looking forward. Thank you for this awesome opportunity. It's always a blessing when I can hit a panel with Nika and Tabitha, who are powerhouses. So I was excited to be a part of this and excited to continue in the conversation. But to what Nika and also Tabitha stated, the action. How do we get into action and changing and dismantling these barriers?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tabitha.
Listen, I'm just trying to keep up with Sharon, Nika, and Anisha is what I'm trying. That was my goal, is to do my part on this panel. So thank you, Anisha, Nika, Sharon, for your amazing deliberative facilitation with so much joy. So I have the pleasure of serving the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association in South Minneapolis. And well before last year, we were always known as a vibrant, eclectic, warm, and welcoming place. And so we see you no matter where you're at. Our borders to the north are Lake Street, and to the east is Cedar, and to the west is Chicago, and to the south is 38th. Unfortunately, because of the events that transpired last year with the heinous murder of Mr. George Perry Floyd Jr., we became the epicenter of a civil uprising, if you will. And I know that many of you on this call, if not all, has felt the ripple effects of that. And so we are trying to do our level best to hold our ground and contribute to as many community, collaborative, and coalition efforts as possible. so that not that we recover, not that we get back to where we were, but that we embark on a new journey of a new degree of health, a new degree of wellness, and a new degree of wealth for everybody that lives, walks, and plays in our community. So I have basically never been on social media, so you'll have to forgive me. You won't find me on the Facebook or the Twitter, but you can certainly reach out via LinkedIn and or shoot me an email at tabitha@ppna.org. I would welcome an opportunity to connect with as many of you as possible. It truly has been my honor. Special thank you to SBA for pulling this together.
Thank you, Tabitha. Nika.
I'd like to thank the SBA and Sharon as the moderator, and then all of you for being active participants in the call. So I'm Nika Constantino. Professionally, I work with one of the nation's largest banks and work with high net worth individuals and developed business owners in my capacity there. Outside in community, as you know, I host Financial Fitness and am passionate about economic expansion and economic inclusion, specifically in the Black community. So I'm all about saving, investing, and returning value in community. How do we move the comma to the left to get out of this kind of depressive state that we find historically marginalized Black community in. So I'm grateful to be here. You can connect with me on social media. When you connect with me, you're connecting with me, not a representative of any organization that I can be affiliated with or happen to be affiliated with. On Twitter, I'm Anika Serwa, NNEKASERWAA. And then on LinkedIn, just my name. And I welcome conversation always. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, guys. I mean, this was a power-packed panel. Thank you, Tabitha. Thank you, Nika. Thank you, Anisha. My name is Sharon Smith Akinsani. I'm the CEO of the Ray McKenzie Group and the founder of People of Color Careers, social hiring network for professionals of color. And if you have not created your free profile and uploaded your resume, this is Black-owned technology. I built it from the ground up to make sure that Black professionals can connect directly with recruiters who work for employers who are dead serious about increasing racial inclusivity at all levels of the corporate structure. It has been my honor to have this conversation with you today about the state and future of Black-owned businesses. I just know that we're going to be okay if we agree to reach out to one another and ask for help. If we learn the art of networking so that we can learn what each other knows or what they have access to, what tools, tips, and advice that they have for us. If we just put our shoulders back and reach out and ask for help, we're going to be okay. But we have to be committed to that. We have to be driven to get the information that we need to move that business from 5 to 6 figures, from 6 to 7 figures, 7 to 8. We are a resilient people, and I'm expecting for you to explode your business in 2021. On behalf of the Small Business Administration, I would like to thank all of you for being here with us for this Power Pack conversation. Thank you to Brian McDonald and all of the team at SBA for putting this together. I think it was an instructive, awesome conversation. Thank you so much for being here. And I also would like to extend my gratitude and thanks to St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter for joining us today to give us those words of wisdom. It is so important that we all stick together and make sure that we have awesome advice for one another. And I know that he's a busy man, and I appreciate him spending a little bit of his extra time with us today. With that, I want you to have the best day ever and get on out there and make sure that a Black-owned business not just survives, but thrives. Thank you so much.
Sharon, I'm sorry, I totally forgot to thank you. So thank you, Sharon, and thank you, Brian, for this awesome opportunity.